there is a tendency among us to disconnect from one another. When we understand this whole discussion on spiritual integrity, we understand that in the last decade there has been an assault against integrity. Social scientists have declared that this assault was inevitable simply because there has been a blatant, insolent attack, leaders among leaders and against leadership in general. As a result of the blatant attack, there has been this condition that has now come to the forefront of society. Listen to this. Never before have you seen folk throwing shoes at public officials.
True.
Never before radio personalities calling folk derogatory names.
Indeed.
Because there has been a collapse in our respect for one another. So therefore, my first submission to us is that if we are to restore integrity, we must become revivalists of respect. That if we are to fix this thing, that there must be, and we'll talk about it later, a reconstruction of right relationships. And out of that reconstruction of right relationships, there is a life-giving language that I must use when I'm talking to you. And the language that I use as I am talking to you must not only recover something that's in you, it must discover something that is in you, repair something that is in you, and restore something that is laying dormant within you.
All right.
My conversation can no longer be on the level of such familiarity until it becomes superficial. And that was a result of the 20th century, where we became so transparent with one another that the walls and the boundaries were collapsed, and we no longer had a right to the development of self, because we became so familiar with one another, so familiar with our adjutants, so familiar with our entourage, so familiar with our church members, until when we came and it came time to correct them, they said to us, "You can't tell me nothing because I saw you doing myself." Out of this desire for transparency, every conversation now becomes a confession and disclosure. Some things you need to keep to yourself and take it to the Lord in prayer. And the boundaries were destroyed. And as a result of the boundaries being destroyed, and we let some folk around us know some things that they had no right to know. As a result of that familiarity, we then became guarded, and our personalities went into hibernation. And the hibernation of our personalities caused us to become frozen inside, to the extent that now when we engage one another, it is all such a superficial and a shallow level until you have ceased to learn how to talk to each other's face, talk to each other's spirit, and talk to each other's heart. So here we are engaging in superficial relationships, and nobody is being celebrated. Nobody is being appreciated anymore because of the, let me say it in a nice way, because of the second agenda. Because of the second agenda, We'll deal with this afternoon. I only relate to you as you can serve me.
That's going to be interesting.
Or I only relate to you as I can make you an extension of me. That's why we have to go back and talk about the right of the other to become.
Ouch. Oh, she's walking.
This afternoon. This morning, we see God calling the Moseses in the room. And you could very well be sitting beside a Moses. Whether male or female, you could be. How do you know you're sitting beside a Moses? The Moseses in the room are not called to deliver Egypt.
That's exactly right.
The Moseses in the room are called to deliver the children of God. Let me say it again. The Moseses in the room are not afraid to call Carolyn and say, talk about spiritual integrity. The Moseses in the room have reached the point that because of what they went through, being dropped in the waters, the reputation of having had been a murderer, of living in the house of the Pharaoh, of familiar experiences God had ordained their footsteps to travel in, so that not only do they qualify to be the deliverer, but they themselves know how to be delivered. You don't qualify unless you haven't been, thank you, sir, delivered. And you don't qualify unless you understand that the experiences of your life were not meant for you to make a lifestyle out of them, but they were so that you would go in and come out, and then go back in and be. Y'all better help me this morning. Don't make me say 8 o'clock in the morning. We got to listen beyond our colors. There are some of us in this room that don't have a problem to tell you that our anointing came because we have been through hell. Our anointing came because of the vicissitudes and the problems of our lives. Our anointings came because we're not trying to hide behind a collar or a title if it had not been for the Lord.
My God.
I'm looking the room. I'm looking around the room because some of us we want to believe that our collar is a hiding place.
No, it's not.
But I am the therapist to the casualties that I have to keep catching. I am the counselor to the victims, and I have come out of a dire urgency to say to the college and the people, we need to talk. Moses, don't be afraid to call the meeting.
Right
Let me
there.
say it again.
Right there.
Because I see I don't have but a select chosen group of Moseses in this room. Bishop, can I say it? Because there's too many of us. We want to play the game. We want to play the game. But the game, even the game has run out. Even the game has become weak. Even there's those, listen, don't play the game with the folk who made the game. today.
I got it. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Lady Cornelia, you got to understand something. Moses, when you call the meeting, and Rashi says, when the meeting is called, Moses does not address their place in Egypt first. When the meeting is called, Rashi begins to talk to them because the strategy of God is not to convert the Egyptians, but to convince the Egyptians of the power of God by the major mighty signs and wonders he does through his children. And when they see what God does with his children, that will make them wonder about their God. Understand the strategy. The strategy is they shall ask about your God. When children, you become living epistles.
Amen. Amen.
They shall ask about your God when they see God in you. They will ask about your God when they see the power of God in you. Listen, they will ask about your God when they see how you have survived. And not only did you realize you're not just in this, you're not of this. They will ask about your God when they see your power and ability to have survived in the midst of the adversarial environment and condition. They will ask about your God when you don't go out of the city, but he blesses you in the city. They will ask you about your God when they see God use you to do signs and Moses called the meeting. And the only ones that won't come are the ones that feel intimidated by the subject matter of the meeting. Moses, when you address the children, talk to the children about the fact that they cannot adopt the Egyptian mentality of bondage. Now, Abraham Joshua Heschel says, he says that Egypt is not symbolic only of a place in Northwest Africa, but Egypt becomes symbolic of a mentality of limitations, confinement, a mentality of restricted boundaries superimposed. Egypt becomes symbolic of a place of limitations and a suppressed, oppressive mentality that causes one to live beneath the purpose and the call of God. A purpose that cannot be shifted, redefined by the context because of the nature of the content. A purpose and a call that because of its being extended, given, birth into you before you got personality and before you came to Egypt, that it has the power and the ability to sustain, to keep, to anchor, and to hold in position and place the bearer of the purpose regardless of the place.